Part 147. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1466. Bendashu Leader adds Update 8. There is a lot of information written in the chromosomes. This situation is not new to Gretel at all. Take the 23 pairs of human chromosomes, which contain endless genes. It is said that there are countless shit mountain codes that have evolved one after another since invertebrates. But what kind of information are contained in these chromosomes of the dragon clan, and whether all the knowledge and memories of the dragon clan are included, Gretel is really not sure. Secret guessing is secret guessing. Guessing without evidence can only be recorded in the core of meditation. Then, the big hard work begins. It would be great if we could know what role the dragon gene plays. This job is extremely difficult and the workload is huge. In Gretel's previous life, countless blind men and women in laboratories around the world were dismantling the human genome and testing genetic targets one by one. By the time Gretel traveled through time, the degree of completion was only a drop in the ocean. At this moment, Gretel was alone. The chromosomes of dragons were infinitely larger than those of humans. If you want to understand them all, you can imagine the workload. If he followed the same practices as in his previous life, Gretel felt that even if he advanced to become a legend, even if the lifespan of a legend was endless, he would still not be able to finish it until his spirit and soul were completely corrupted. Fortunately, there is a trick. The genes of the dragon race are huge, and the genes of those half-dragons and races with part of the dragon race can be used for cross-comparison. Which gene may produce dragon scales, which gene may give dragon horns, which gene may give breath, which gene may give extremely strong physique. As long as the sample size is large enough, there will always be some results. This was the idea behind Gretel's words to provide free treatment to the intelligent races in the Silver Dragon's territory. Now that the patient has not yet arrived, he continues to measure the chromosomes of the giants of the Frostfire tribe, cross-reference them, and compare them one by one with those of the dragon beasts. Ah, I'm exhausted. I am exhausted. Boss, I'm almost exhausted. The tower spirit of the mage tower is diligent and busy, buzzing and counting every day. But Oak Staff cried and made trouble every day. As he advanced, the amount of calculations also increased, overwhelming him. The chromosomes of elves, the chromosomes of Warcraft, and the chromosomes of dragons, the amount of calculation is completely different. His boss doesn't feel sorry for him at all. I lost so many tasks all at once, and it was so dark every day that I didn't even have time to bask in the sun, blow in the wind, or drink some Longdeo special dew. He didn't even know how the water on Long Island was different from other places. Shouldn't it smell like a dragon? Why can't he taste it? Okay, work hard and don't complain. Gretel patted it comfortingly. Before the next batch of sampling objects arrives, if you have time to finish counting this batch, I will take you for a walk. Or find you some dragon-specific nutrients. Well, how about dragon dung? I'll go back and ask Sokka. I don't know where the dragon dung is stored. As the guardian of the dragon nest, will Sokka need to take care of the dragon dung? When he was in Nevis and traveling along the way, he had never faced this problem before. The new manure barely calmed the oak staff, and it continued to hum and count. Between the tree crowns, small snakes are looming, and they are also trying their best to help with calculations. The black and white patterns on his body flashed and flashed. For those who didn't know, they thought they were strings of semiconductor components running desperately. Gretel stared at it for a while and sighed. I remember that the various resources of the dragon clan are very beneficial to the growth of the little snake. It used to be just the scales of a pseudo-dragon, so it advanced once. Now that the little snake is working so hard, should we get some dragon resources for it? It's impossible to go to the dragon's nest and clean it up, pick up some fallen dragon scales, scrape dragon foot skin, etc. Even if Cyrilla was willing to take him there, Greed himself couldn't bear it. After thinking about it, enduring the pain, he took a small portion from the blood flowing out of the dragon beast and the rotten tissue cut off during the operation, and gave it to the little snake. The little snake swallowed it in one gulp, and happily swam back and forth in the canopy of the oak tree. He swam faster and faster, and suddenly he fell out of the tree crown with a snap, and lay straight on the ground. Greed was startled and went up to touch it, but his fingers did not penetrate the snake, but touched the entity. The ice is cool, hard, and smooth, and slightly elastic when pressed. Isn't it a living snake? Greed froze on the spot and communicated through the contract. The little snake was lying on the ground, twisting left and right, unable to even coil up in the snake formation. After a while, a message was sent to Gretel. I'm all right. From a virtual body to a physical body, it is roughly equivalent to returning from yin to yang. If this is just okay, then there's nothing wrong with it. Gretel waited patiently for a day, and finally waited until the little snake slowly coiled into a snake formation. After another 3 days, it changed from a solid body back to an incorporeal body, and then retracted into Gretel's sea of consciousness. Be happy and keep rolling. I've advanced. I've advanced. I've advanced again. I can finally become a physical entity. I actually have this day. Gretel asked patiently and found out that in the wilderness, the contracted spirits enshrined by the tribes did have a precedent of turning into entities. It is said that there is a very powerful elder deep in the wilderness. His contract spirit is a mammoth, which can carry him through the enemy formation and crush tens of thousands of warriors with one foot. Of course, if you want to become an entity, the conditions are very strict. It requires the master to be powerful enough and the contract spirit to have great opportunities. The little snake followed the old priest before and never thought that this day would come. After all, the old priest had only been in the middle level his whole life, and he could only glance at the threshold of the high level. Now I have been following Gretel, traveling to countless places, swallowing totem gods, and eating gifts from the world, from pseudo-dragons to dragon beasts. Somehow, I suddenly got the conditions together. Advanced is advanced. Can you still switch back and forth between the physical and virtual bodies? Gretel took it out and stared at it. Suddenly there was an itch in the palm of my hand, and I was licked by a thin snake letter, and then from the snake letter to the snake head, from the snake head to the snake body, from the snake body to the snake tail, little by little, it slowly turned into reality. Yes. I can change back and forth. I can also turn into half and half, with the solid body in front and the virtual body behind. Gretel's eyes lit up. Being able to become half and half means that not only can you help with exploration, but you can also help with surgery. For example, in some cases of cerebral infarction, a small snake can transform into a weak body and sneak in, grab the blood clot and digest it, and then transform back into a weak body and sneak out. This will cause the least harm to the patient and maximize the benefits. But of course, the top priority now is to conduct a comprehensive test on the little snake. Greed took it to Servilia and turned it back into a physical entity. First, he did a B ultrasound, then a CT scan, and then connected the energy source of the Mage Tower to do an MRI. Well, after multiple checks, it turned out that it was indeed a snake and had not mutated in any strange direction. But the little snake was asked to lie down on a snake stick, and was made itchy and flaky, and kept complaining. "Boss, if you want to see what's inside my belly, I'll show it to you. I turned into half incorporeal and half solid, and you just saw it? Why are you torturing me like this?" Greed turned a deaf ear and just ordered it to open its mouth, scrape off epithelial cells, make specimens, and throw them into a microscope for scanning and calculation. This wave again exhausted the oak staff and the little snake to death. After counting diligently until midnight, a message suddenly exploded in Greed's consciousness. Same. Same. Boss, they are the same. What's the same? Greet was awakened alive by the explosion. Rubbing his eyes, he got up and walked to the tree outside the house. He saw the oak tree projecting two rays of light, and specially marked a section. Boss, look. The chromosomes of the dragon beast and the chromosomes of the little snake have the same section. It's the same. I almost died from you. Gretel stared at it with sleepy eyes for a long time, rubbed his eyes, and fell back into the room to continue sleeping. Next time, don't come to me for such an urgent matter. I am a magician and I have to ensure a certain amount of sleep. If I don't sleep well, I won't be able to meditate tomorrow. If I don't meditate well, my research progress will be affected. If my research is slow, you won't be able to advance. Grumbling, muttering, he fell down on the bed. When I woke up the next morning, I let the oak stick appear on the screen again and studied hard. There is indeed one section that is the same. The chromosomes of dragon beasts are numerous and complex, with more than 100 pairs of chromosomes, twisted into a huge pile. The number of pairs of chromosomes in the little snake is much smaller, and each chromosome looks much shorter. The picture taken by the microscope is so small that it is pitifully small. However, the section highlighted by the oak stick, the light and dark points of the chromosomes, are exactly the same. Greet asked him to take out and straighten all the chromosomes of the little snake, and surprisingly found that the section with the dragon's chromosomes was much longer than the other strips. It was as if it was stuck on. Are the dragon's genes so vicious? Just insert it, force it in, insert it if you can, and insert it if you can't, even if you create conditions. Turn someone from a virtual body into a physical body, and then just separate a section and paste it into their chromosomes. Gretel couldn't complain at the moment. However, in order to determine whether it was the chromosomal mutation of the little snake or the strong insertion of the dragon's chromosomes, he had to do more research. Baka, please, Gretel called the turn again. First, be nice and give him some pieces of Warcraft meat jerky to eat, and then ask him. Please catch a few snakes that look exactly like little snakes, catch a few more, a dozen, 20, 34. It doesn't matter if you peck it to death, as long as you bring it back as soon as possible, before it rots, so that I can get the chromosomes, please. It's a trivial matter. Baka the tern flapped its wings and flew away quickly. Not long after, there was a snap, and a half-white snake with black stripes, 3 feet long, fell at the door of the laboratory. Obviously, Baka felt that he had a hard time flying around and didn't mind eating some snacks. Snap, snap, snap. The door of the laboratory rang once, then again, and in 3 days, it rang more than 20 times in a row. Help, boss, I'm really exhausted, can I eat these little snakes? It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1467. The little snake can be eaten, but not now. Gretel took samples one by one, and measured the chromosomes one by one, until the oak stick almost suffocated. Even if I eat them all after taking the test, I won't be able to understand my hatred. Yanubeka only wanted convenience. Most of the little snakes he caught were not even magical beasts, and the remaining half were just elementary magical beasts. The energy density is too low. Even if you spend a long time eating it, you will not absorb as much as you expend. Gretel was satisfied. After scanning the chromosomes of dozens of small snakes of the same kind, it is basically certain that the extra part in the snake spirit's chromosomes is a fragment of the dragon's chromosomes. Since it is a fragment of the dragon clan, he can grab the little snake and keep asking. Do you feel like you have any extra skills? Does turning into a physical entity count? I need to study this. Greet was quite distressed. The silver dragon seemed to have no ability to change from physical form to incorporeal form, and then from incorporeal form back to physical form. This ability of the little snake cannot be counted in the chromosome account of the silver dragon. Anything else? Spit venom. Can you spray cold air? Spray paralyzing gas, levitation technique? Feather fall technique? Mist wall technique? Control the wind, get bigger? Become stronger? Grow dragon scales, wings, and horns. The little snake twisted around, not knowing whether it was shaking its head or simply moving its body. Gretel asked several times. The little snake coiled up into a ball and buried its head in the snake formation, almost tying into a knot. I don't know, I need to try slowly, little by little. Warcraft is not like humans. Whatever you learn is what you learn. Once you know it, you can do it, but if you don't, you can't. As with Warcraft, new abilities that are unexpectedly advanced and mastered need to be tried slowly and polished slowly. Warcraft that have signed a contract with humans even need guidance from their masters. Without a contract, or their masters don't know how to guide them, they have to rely on instinct. Gretel had no choice but to wait patiently and had no choice but to target the giants of the Frostfire tribe. This one has dragon blood, this one also has a little dragon blood, does it count as having dragon blood? God knows the bloodline of the giants is not like the breeding of thoroughbred horses and dogs, which has clear records. Whose father is who is already unreliable, but when it comes to whose father is whose father, thank God if it is half reliable. Although the accuracy of whose mother is who is much higher, some women are married from other tribes, and it is very difficult to trace their bloodline. Whether there is any dragon blood in it, and where this blood was inherited from, is even more confusing. Ah, so Mendel is better. Gretel threw away the pen in his hand and lay down holding his head. There is a field where you can grow peas, and the purple ones are purple and the white ones are white. Or there are fruit flies in a glass bottle. How many have white eyes and how many have red eyes can be counted one by one. In chromosome research, this is such a happy thing. Greed had no such good things to hope for. I have no choice but to bite the bullet, study one by one, and compare one by one. This chromosome is duplicated with the dragon beast's chromosome. This paragraph is also repeated, but the insertion position is different from the previous one. This chromosome is golden. It is speculated that it may be the source of extraordinary power. We need to focus on research. After a thorough study, I found dozens of specific sections, bulging and stuffed into the chromosomes of the giants, some more, some less. As for the purpose of these special parts, we need to slowly study and slowly identify. Fortunately, there is currently a test subject. The old giant left his disciple at the hospital to guard the door. Although that disciple was young and not high in level, he had already mastered the power of frost. Gretel called him over, first arranged the 3 magic crystals, and then discussed with him in a nice voice. This is the reward. Can you please help me with the research? It's a bit scary, but it doesn't hurt very much. I will try to reduce your pain as much as possible. Before he said how to study it specifically, the little giant straightened up his arms and spread them out in front of him. With your palms facing upwards and your arms splayed out, you assume a posture of letting others take advantage of you. Just give your orders. The elder said that you are the benefactor of our entire tribe. Even if you ask me to die, I will still listen to you. Even a minor giant is nearly 1 meter taller than Gretel. If Gretel wants to talk to him, he must stand on a high platform or let himself float. This posture actually seemed more coercive than frank to Gretel. Gretel took half a step back and shook off a cold sweat. Well, that's not necessary. Speaking of which, can you show me the power of frost you have mastered first? Little Giant was more than happy to demonstrate. He clenched his fists, tried hard to hold his breath, his face flushed, and for a long time, he tried his best to throw out a punch. A circle of cold air spread around the fist, whistling sharply, and condensed into frost 5 or 6 steps ahead. With this punch, the little giant relaxed completely and felt a little embarrassed. This is all I can do, the elder's cold energy is stronger than mine, and it can hit farther than me. Gretel didn't care if his power was strong or not, only that he had it. After asking him kind words and asking about the 5 or 6 attacks he could make in a day, he took him to the research room. He had done this research countless times on Elf Island and was already familiar with it. Cut a strip of skin from the little giant's arm, keep the tissue active, connect it to the body, and stuff one end into the microscope. Fix the entire body so that when he swings his fist, this skin will not be torn off, leaving only the arm he is waving free to move. After debugging the microscope, give the order. Attack. After consuming all his attack data for the day, Gretel also obtained the data as he wished, that extraordinary chromosome, the extraordinary chromosome that had abnormal changes when he attacked, did come from the dragon clan. From this, it is also determined that the function of that chromosome is to enable people to call upon the power of frost. Greet looked up to the sky and sighed. Dragon clan, no wonder these surrounding intelligent races all want to have the blood of the dragon clan. You can also intermarry with dragons and give birth to children with dragon blood. You can also serve the dragon clan and receive their blessings. It's okay to live around dragons and be immersed in the aura of dragons for a long time. To become a dragon slayer, you can also soak in dragon blood. Even if you use various crooked ways, such as letting members of the tribe mate with dragons. In short, as long as you have the blood of the dragon clan, you will definitely make a profit even if it is a little bit. The traits in the dragon's chromosomes can actually be written into the chromosomes of other races and passed down from generation to generation. After getting the initial results, Gretel became more and more interested, studying the bloodline of the Frostfire tribe like peeling cocoons and pulling out silk threads, and cross-comparing their chromosomes. The bloodline genealogy in my hand was in a mess, and so were the test results of this group of people. Coupled with the fact that Little Snake gradually began to understand his new abilities, Gretel finally determined 3 more points. 1 is to make people grow stronger and larger. 1 is to let people have dragon scales and have higher defense. The third one is to give people the ability to be in harmony with the wind. So what do the other dozens of spots do? Just insert them and not express them? Maybe some genes need to be methylated, and some dormant genes need special methods to activate. Gretel rubbed his forehead and kept thinking. It's a pity that the samples are too small, so I can't try them one by one. It would be great if I could see with my own eyes how these intelligent races obtain dragon genes. It is said that the dragon clan has some rituals that can bless their servants and turn them into half-dragons. It would be great if we could understand these rituals and monitor the genetic changes during the rituals in real time. Gretel, what are you doing? Suddenly a head appeared at the door. Gretel was buried in the laboratory every day, which made Sarah feel frustrated. She was not with him 24 hours a day, and went outside to play from time to time. At this moment, she came back with a large bunch of fish from a lake where she used to swim when she was a child, and immediately came to Gretel. Come on. Let's eat grilled fish. It's been a long time since we had a good meal. Greet happened to be short of ideas, so she put down the research in her hands and was dragged out by her obediently. The fish brought back by Sarah ranged from big to small. The big ones were as tall as 2 giants, and the small ones were as long as arms. They were lined up in the open space outside the hospital, and they were extremely plump. Idion, Ash Moonsong, Bernard, and the 2 giant gatekeepers were all busy in the process of dissecting the fish, scraping the fish scales, cutting the fish, and preparing to grill the fish. Gretel looked around, selected a fish weighing more than 3 kilograms, and started to roll up his sleeves to work. They scraped the scales, removed the gills, disemboweled the fish, cleaned the fish's intestines and gall, made fine cuts on both sides of the fish, set up a large pot, and dropped the whole fish in to fry it thoroughly. While it was fried and fragrant, I quickly took it out, put it on the flat plate next to it, and poured the pre-mixed sauce on it. Pile onions, green peppers, lettuce slices, and various mushrooms in a flat plate, light the fire below, and start cooking. Greet, what are you doing? Grilled fish. This is also a way of grilling fish. Just wait a while, it will be delicious. The grilled fish made in this way is really delicious. Sirara gnawed the fish from head to tail, wishing she could even swallow the fish bones, and rubbed Greet. Make another one. Make another one. Make all the fish I brought back into grilled fish like this. Her hunting results are extremely rich. Even if several people work together, they have only processed half of it so far. Gretel had no choice but to continue doing each step one by one, and then he realized something was wrong. Sarala, why do the scales of this fish look like dragon scales? Oh. This lake, we used to bathe in it when we were kids. The fish, shrimps, and frogs in it are more or less tainted with the aura of dragons, so they must be a little different. Gretel's eyes lit up instantly. There are few human samples, so other organisms can be used. Bring fish, snakes, lizards, frogs, and various mammals, interact with the dragon's biological materials, and see what you can come up with. Dragons, fish, snakes, dragons, lizards, frogs, all come to my bowl. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1468. Chapter 1463, Get me some dragon, life essence, please. Bendashu leader adds update 9. Dragon beast blood, diluted 1:1000. Soaking fish eggs. Soak frog eggs. Soak lizard eggs. Soaking snake eggs, is it effective to soak snake eggs with such a thick shell in 1:1000 diluted blood? Do you want it to be slightly thicker? Greet bit the pen and struggled repeatedly. It is advantageous to have two nature walkers with you. Even if the season is over, you can forcefully produce a batch of eggs for him to experiment on, as long as you give him enough resources. However, the purpose of the experiment, the experimental ideas, and the design of the experimental plan are his own business. No one can replace him, or even correct him. At most, he can just make suggestions or ask, "What are you doing like this?" "Oh, this is Sirara asking." Gretel scratched his hair and smiled at her. "When I try to soak them in dragon's blood so that they can hatch out, they can have a bit of dragon characteristics. It seems, the dragon's blood is too thick." The dragon's blood diluted 1,000 times was poured into the water. Visible to the naked eye, the fish eggs immediately began to bubble. Gretel quickly threw a spell, magnifying the image in front of him 100 times, and saw the protective film outside the fish eggs cracking, corroding, and disintegrating. Then, the egg membrane outside the fish eggs also begins to disintegrate. Finally, the large swaths of fish eggs were completely scattered, and the yolk filled the water. It was obvious that all these fish eggs were finished. All fish eggs are destroyed. All frog eggs are destroyed. All lizard eggs are destroyed. Snake eggs, the snake eggs were not completely destroyed, but they weren't much better. Gretel tried his best to feel the life breath of these snake eggs, and found that 99 of the hundreds of snake eggs were destroyed, leaving only 2 eggs, which were still holding on strongly despite burning a hole in the shell. Moreover, if you feel it carefully, the activity seems to be a little stronger. That dragon's blood must be thicker. Sirala sniffed the diluted version of dragon's blood carefully, and gave the answer with certainty. What affected them before was all breath, breath. What is breath? It is the road we walk, the wind we exhale, and the little things we pick up when we occasionally swim in the lake. I can smell this dragon blood. It is much stronger than the dragon scent in the lake. It will definitely burn them to death. Ah, I'm really sorry. Gretel's own perception allows him to sense the dragon's aura, which he can only feel under very strong conditions. In his perception, the concentration of 1:1000 is no different from ordinary saline, and he can't feel it at all. Just this, can you burn the fish eggs to death? So according to the standard, if I pee across the water, the fish in the water will eat Jackie Chan. If I pee across the mountain, the grass in the mountain will taste it and turn into Ganoderma lucidum, and the fairy boy will pick it up and live a long life. Then the possibility is really too low. If this happens, is it normal to burn a large number of people to death? Fortunately, there is a very perceptive Sarah beside me. Gretel smiled at the silver dragon girl and said softly. Then Cyrilla, help me dilute it again? From now on, start diluting in steps until you feel that the concentration is similar to the concentration in the lake water. Make a record? Then, let's continue trying. Okay. Cyrilla happily rolled up her sleeves and went to work. Gretel was left alone facing the two snake eggs, scratching his chin and continuing to think. Should we cut it open now and observe the cell division and chromosome iteration inside? Or should we keep it and raise it until the snakes hatch out of their shells, and then take samples for testing? Or cut one open and keep the other? What if the one left behind cannot be fed? While struggling, I quickly set up a magic circle to keep the temperature and humidity constant, keep it clean, maintain the energy intensity around the snake egg, and help it grow and hatch. After finishing here, Cyrilla has happily prepared another batch of liquid, from diluting it 1,000 times, to diluting it 10,000 times, and then diluting it 50,000 times. Finally, she came over with great authority and reported. It's done. It's almost the same as lake water. It's ready to use. After pouring this batch of water, the fish eggs and frog eggs finally had a clear reaction. 9/10 of the people died in the gurgling bubbles, and 1/10, the 1/10 closest to the center, remained motionless. The mortality rate is 90%. Then, the possibility of mutation in the remaining 10% is very high. Gretel raised an eyebrow. He waited patiently, then flew out of the mage's hand and deftly picked out a batch of fish eggs. Work hard to provide natural breath, and work hard to promote its rapid division and rapid growth. Keep a few eggs every day, keep a few eggs every day, sample, count, and compare until the fish eggs turn into small fish. Gretel held up his chin and stared at them, trying to feel them for a long time before going to Cyrilla for help. Cyrilla, can you feel which one or which of these fish has the aura of the dragon? They are too weak. Cyrilla wrinkled her nose, snorted and turned her head. Stop for a moment, then turn your head and feel carefully one by one. This. Gretel followed her instructions, picked them up one by one, took samples, and did chromosome testing. The moment the image unfolded, he breathed a heartfelt sigh. Ah, so beautiful. Under a microscope, the cells in a fish show the characteristics of different stages. Chromosomes take on the shape of a double helix and appear to be tightly packed together. The appearance of the double strands of chromosomes unwinding. After the chromosome double strands are unraveled, they begin to separate and break. The untied double strands start to copy based on the two single strands. A new batch of fruits hung from the crown of the oak tree, crystal clear, with layers of runes inside. Sunlight shines through the gaps between the green leaves, illuminating the surface of these fruits with a layer of rainbow luster, buzzing and spinning. Dragon chromosomes. Dragon chromosomes. There are some dragon chromosomes in these little fish. Gretel perked up. He then went back to study the previous batches of fish eggs and took out the data at each time point. He was surprised to find that starting from the second day of the eggs, Dragon parts were inserted into the chromosomes. Keep the remaining little fish well. When they grow up, you can see what characteristics and abilities they have, and compare them with these chromosomes, and you will know which section does what. By the way, raising fish, frogs, lizards, and other animals requires a dedicated person to take charge. Where to find it? I'm afraid it won't work if I rely on Illidan and Ash Moonsong for everything. What, a giant? The two giants at the door have rough hands and feet. I hope they can saw wood and make furniture. I hope they can raise fish and frogs. Forget it. Gretel sighed and had to ask the old giant again. The old giant was very enthusiastic and recommended 2 tribes to him. To be more careful and skillful, you have to count the group of dwarfs living in White Crow Mountain. It's just that they are noisy and not very obedient. If they don't have the dragon's nest to speak, I'm afraid they won't be willing to work for you. To be closer to nature, there is a tribe of barbarians in the Daking Forest beside the Black Lake who make a living by raising animals. Since you have high-level followers here, you should shout and you can call a group over. Greet thought about it and decided to send Bernard to go and call some savages to come and work for him. Anyway, whether fish or frogs, they all lay a large number of eggs as soon as they are laid. It doesn't hurt at all to raise them to death. This is another long-term study. Even if it is a frog, it will not take a day or 2 to study its characteristics after it is grown. Gretel was leisurely, treating patients when they came, and brushing all the chromosomes of the tribe. Do research when there are no patients. There is an inexhaustible supply of fish eggs, frog eggs, etc., and you can do a few of them every day. You can make the oak staff unable to do anything, and you don't even have time to chase Servilia. He works leisurely here, but in the high altitude of Long Island, it is in dire straits. 20 or 30 legendary dragons gathered on a specially condensed cloud city, each with their heads held high, staring at the distortion far and far away. In their outer circle, a group of mature dragons and senior adult dragons each occupied one side, gathering their wings and breathing lightly. If you look carefully, you can see that many dragons have more or less scars on their bodies. We need more children. More baby dragons. In the center of the legendary dragon, a golden dragon with a body as huge as a mountain and scales as dull as brass, with a heavy voice, rumbled across Cloud City. In the past 1,000 years, a pair of adult dragons have only laid an average of 3 clutches of eggs, and only 5 children have survived to the adult dragon stage, where they can get married and give birth to new children. Adult dragons and legendary dragons have fewer children, and even fewer survive to the adult dragon stage. In the past 1,000 years, the number of our legendary dragons has not been increasing, but decreasing. We need our kindred, we need warriors. All dragons, all adult dragons, should get married as soon as possible and have as many children as possible. But laying eggs will affect our strength growth among the mature dragons in the outer circle, a small voice rang. If a pair of adult dragons only lay 1 clutch of dragon eggs during adulthood, they have a 20% chance of breaking through to mature dragons. If 2 clutches of eggs are laid, there is only a 5% chance. If you give birth to 3 litters or even more, then you will only be able to reach adult dragon status in this life, which is too far away from becoming a legend. After all, we need more legendaries, not more drakes, right? But without more children, there will be no more legends. Old Jinlong raised his eyelids and rumbled. After reaching legend, the chance of giving birth to a child is very small. But, now it is getting harder and harder for dragon eggs to hatch, and it is getting harder and harder for young dragons to awaken. If every dragon egg is hatched and awakened in every nest, then there will be less waste. Strength. Do you want to use magic to intervene? That won't work. Survival of the fittest is the principle of the dragon clan and cannot be broken. But, when there was a commotion above, Gretel managed to get rid of Cyrilla, sneaking up to the old giant of the Frostfire tribe. Smiling brightly, he discussed with the old man. That, the dragon beasts, life essence, can you get some for me? Thanks to @dong chuan for the 1,500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1469. What? The old giant looked at Gretel like a monster. The life essence of the dragon beast? What do you mean, my lord? You don't mean, what I think, do you? Hey, it's just. Gretel scratched his head, gestured, and continued speaking with difficulty. Alas, even though he is a doctor, even though he has avoided Cyrilla, even though he wants to obtain some haploid male germ cells, it is not something that cannot be opened up in medicine. The old giant's eyes opened wider and wider. It's not that he questions Gretel's request. It's normal for the owner of Dragon Nest and his friends to ask for all kinds of weird things, but... Sir, why don't you have one yourself? Gretel. Well, one lie needs to be followed by many lies, countless lies. I shouldn't have admitted that I was a silver dragon at that time. Don't ask any more questions, just tell me whether you want to do it or not. He had no choice but to lower his face and give strong orders. The old giant frowned and hesitated. Sir, we will definitely obey your order. He leaned down respectfully. But the dragon beast is elusive, and it will take time to find it. To get what you want, you may have to use a certain degree of violence, which will cause harm to it. Sir, please tell me, should I mention it to Dragon Nest first? It's not that Greet can't understand this kind of caution. I had no choice but to take the time to go to the dragon's nest. Regarding his request, the half-dragon guard Captain Sokka didn't think there was anything wrong and said respectfully. You are the master's distinguished guest and the person recognized by Miss Sarah. As long as you do not cause fatal or irreparable harm to the dragon beast, you can do whatever you want. Do you need the guards from Dragon's Nest to help you complete it? That's not necessary. Gretel shook his head. No matter how strong the dragon beast is, it is only about the size of a young dragon. It does not know magic yet. It is just a stronger beast that can be tied up by digging a hole or making a trap. There are giants who do rough work, one can do 5, he is there for magic and other things, he needs high-end force to suppress the situation, and he can also drag Gideon over. As for reconnaissance and finding the whereabouts of the dragon beast, what does Turnbaka do? A high-level flying monster that is close to being half-legendary. Although the territory of the legendary silver dragon is large, he can fly in a circle in one day. With Sokka's words, it only took Gretel 3 days to find the dragon beast. The giants went out in force, digging pits, setting up obstacles and placing bait. Not long after, the dragon beast rumbled, following the giant hunter's lure, and rushed into a narrowing canyon. Stone wall. Tangled with vines. Soothing spell. Greet stood high above the canyon, throwing spells down one after another. Trap the dragon beast so that it cannot move. Soothe the drake so it calms down and stops panicking. Next, there seems to be a corresponding spell in the pink book. Gretel returned with a full load. He carefully took out a little dragon spirit, put it under a microscope, and observed carefully. Well, the color is white jelly-like, and it gradually liquefies within 20 minutes. The activity is very good, the proportion with the ability to move forward quickly accounts for more than 50%, and the proportion with the ability to move forward slowly accounts for more than 25%, it is very good. Concentration. After recording all the characteristics, he took 0.1 ml of it extremely carefully, diluted it 10 times, and injected it into a female fish. In an instant, the female fish started beating desperately in Gretel's hand. This is. Gretel quickly threw it back into the water, summoned the contract snake, and let it enter the female fish's body in an incorporeal state. Gretel tried his best to observe through the eyes of the little snake, and saw that the eggs in the female fish's belly exploded into one ball, then another, and then another, as if they were poisoned. One ball after another, finally, the female fish turned over with a white belly and floated on the water, seemingly dead. The spirit of the contract went around in its belly, burning through all its internal organs, not to mention the fish eggs. It seems that dragon essence is still too strong for fish. Do I need to dilute it 100 times? Or 1000 times? Or dilution? Dilution. Dilute hard. Dilute it once, try it once, and a female fish dies, dilute it again, try it again, and another female fish dies. Gretel diluted it to 100,000 times in one breath, and only the female fish survived, but all the fish eggs in her belly were destroyed. I feel like it should be soon. Gretel took a long breath and repeated the experiment again, diluting it to 200,000 times. This time, he directly performed a caesarean section on the female fish and observed the union process of the dragon beast's reproductive cells and fish eggs under the microscope. Forward, forward, fast forward, contact the outer membrane of the fish egg, enter the fish egg, the fish egg disintegrates. Under the microscope, after disintegrating a fish egg, the reproductive cells of the dragon beast did not lose their vitality, but appeared more energetic. It continued to swim forward quickly, and after a while, it found the second fish egg, the third fish egg, the fourth fish egg. If only humans were so strong, there wouldn't be so many infertility issues. Greet sighed sincerely. Before he traveled through time, in vitro fertilization was already very popular, and countless couples turned to this method to obtain children. Among them, men's problems account for a large part. The latest technology has advanced to the point where microneedles are used to directly inject individual germ cells into egg cells. The number is too small, don't be afraid, just one will do. There is no energy, you can't swim, and you can't break through the egg cell defense. Don't be afraid, the microneedle will go right in. In this way, the success rate of cell combination is high. The problem is that escaping natural selection means that many genes that are too fragile and should not be passed on are passed on. In the long run, what is right and what is wrong is also a question that is difficult to explain in one word. In any case, the reproductive cells of this dragon beast passed 5 levels, killed 6 generals, and finally disappeared after killing 8 fish eggs, and did not successfully combine with any of them. But Greed had already seen hope, and he continued to experiment. After trying for the 20th time, a dragon beast reproductive cell finally came to rest among the fish eggs. Gretel's eyes widened. He quickly moved the mage's hand to remove the precious fish egg from the petri dish and threw it into the microscope. After waiting patiently for a day, under the electron microscope, wonderful scenes appeared one by one with the light emitted by the oak stick. The chromosomes of the dragon beast are not in pairs, but are just single-stranded chromosomes spread out among the fish eggs. In fish, the single strands of chromosomes, which are fewer and shorter, also expand. Then, the two sets of chromosome chains began to get closer, some were glued together, and some were unable to be glued together anyway. As a result, the dragon beast's chromosomes began to rapidly disintegrate. The stars scattered one by one and disappeared. I don't know whether it disintegrated into various purines and pyrimidines, or was dissolved by some enzyme and turned into smaller components. All in all, when it's all over, the new fertilized egg will have only chromosomes similar to the original size of the fish. It is longer and has a few more segments, but no matter what, it is still far behind the size of the dragon's chromosomes. It's really wonderful. Gretel sighed softly. It turns out that when the dragon race combined with other races, the chromosomes looked like this, most of the content was lost, leaving only the core. Therefore, those dragonfish, dragon frogs, dragon lizards, and even various magical beasts and intelligent creatures with dragon bloodline can get pregnant normally and pass on normally. It turns out that their genes were only embedded with some fragments, rather than being completely rewritten to look like dragons. So, what about me? What about Cyrilla and I? How much information can our children carry? Will the information I provide not be enough? Greet thought about the number of his chromosomes and the number of points, and then recalled Cyrilla's, and was deeply aware of the crisis. But this cannot be solved in a short time. All he can do for the time being is to be patient and work hard to do follow-up research. During the cell combination process, the wind energy is continuously supplied at 0.1 units/hour for 12 hours. Continuously supplying 0.1 units/hour of frost energy for 12 hours. Continuously supply evenly mixed frost energy and wind energy, 0.1 units/hour, lasting 12 hours. Experimental results show that continuous supply of energy helps to improve the success rate of cell union and also contributes to further cell division. For dragon beasts of silver dragon bloodline, the combination of the frost energy and wind energy that the silver dragon prefers, as well as the natural life energy, has the highest success rate. Going a step further, Greet estimates that by gradually increasing the energy supply according to the development cycle, the success rate of successfully hatching Arauana eggs will be the highest. It can be speculated that during the mating process of dragons, if strong energy can be continuously supplied, it will help the dragons to successfully conceive, and it will also help the dragon eggs to hatch. Greet's eyes were bright and he was writing rapidly. Keep fish. Raise Arauana. There are so many Arauanas with dragon bloodlines, and there is a high probability that each dragon family chromosome that can be inherited is different. Identify their traits and abilities one by one. You can always count on cracking not just half, but 10% of the mystery of the dragon chromosomes, right? What are you studying? Suddenly a head stuck out of the laboratory. Cyrilla looked around, her nose twitched, and she frowned. It smells so weird here. What have you been doing lately? Celera, you can compare the chromosome points I deciphered and exercise on your own. Have you got any results? Not yet, don't care. Come with me. Brother wants to see you. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1470. Bendashu leader adds 10 more updates. What? Summoned by brother-in-law. Gretel's first reaction was to quickly take a shower and throw 17 or 80 cleaning techniques on himself. Cyrilla can smell the strange smell. Can her brother, the senior adult male silver dragon, not smell it? When I smell it, I'm willing to ask what are you doing, it's okay, but I'm afraid I won't even ask. I don't ask questions, but I don't know how to arrange it for me. However, Cyrilla looked around and saw that he had nothing to do, so she stood at the door and waited. Gretel had no choice but to perform the cleaning technique on herself while letting her pull her out without her feet touching the ground. After leaving the research institute and walking to the hospital hall, I saw a male elf with profound features pacing back and forth in the hall from a distance. His momentum made it feel like the ground in the hall could be crushed. Gretel rushed to meet him. Vaska turned around and quickly came over, sniffing before he arrived. What does it smell like? Well. Vaska didn't ask further questions, but strode over, nodded to Gretel, and asked him what he was busy with recently. Greet said a few words briefly, hiding the words about monogametic cells of dragon beasts. Vaska didn't ask any more questions, and just said, "It sounds like you are working on transforming ordinary creatures into dragon-type creatures. It just so happens that I have a project at hand, can you help me?" This is the first time Gretel has received a project since arriving on Dragon Island. He raised his chin and looked at Vaska, waiting for his brother-in-law to speak. Vaska's face suddenly stiffened, and then a trace of red appeared on her cheeks. "That's right, I made a bet with my friends recently." As he slowly spoke, Cyrilla continued to ask questions, and only then did Gretel find out that this brother-in-law had fallen in love with a crystal dragon girl. Coincidentally, a certain golden dragon living nearby also fell in love with this girl. Both parties have the same family background, the same age, the same abilities, and the ability to please girls is also very different. Gretel silently complained, "I'm afraid they are not very good. I couldn't decide for a while, so I made a bet. It is impossible for two dragons to fight each other. They are both fighting in the sky. They must work together to deal with the outside world. They cannot fight each other at this time. It is impossible to compare military achievements. Whoever strikes in which direction and who comes down to repair must obey the instructions of the legends." Among the above group of warriors, adult dragons are considered the lowest group and do not have much autonomy. Therefore, according to traditional customs, the two sides set up a gambling battle. Each would send out 100 half-dragons or dragon-blooded monsters for an unrestricted confrontation. In order to show the true spell level and territorial strength of both parties, these half-dragons and dragon-blooded monsters must be newly transformed since the treaty was made. In 3 years, no matter how many people can be converted, and if they are not able to convert 100 people, that means they are not good enough. If the transformation is late, the level of the subordinates cannot be improved, and the level is not enough. Regardless of whether they are half-dragons or dragon-blooded monsters, they must be born in the territory and grow up in the territory. They cannot go elsewhere to ask for foreign aid. You know, I have been busy during this period and have no time to bother with these things. Just follow the usual practice in the past and call all the strong men in the territory over and throw them into the transformation formation together. The mortality rate is a bit high. Can you help me host it? Just watch and throw in a healing spell if needed. I will give you the detailed structure of the conversion array and all the past information." Gretel only heard half of it, and his eyes were already bright. "My brother-in-law is busy and has no time. Wouldn't that golden dragon do the same thing, throwing the strong men in the territory into the transformation formation at will? Now that I leave this matter to him, it's not that my brother-in-law is asking him to help, but it's giving him a chance to practice." As soon as Vaska finished asking, he nodded. "No problem. No problem. As long as you don't worry about me messing up, just leave it to me. By the way, I still need dash. Just say whatever you need." Vaska took care of everything. Greet had been waiting for this opportunity for too long, and without even thinking about it, he followed the stick. "I need your sample for chromosome analysis. How much do you want? Do you want blood? I'll give it to you right away. Within 2 liters, just ask. For a giant dragon over 30 meters long, 2 liters of blood is nothing, drizzle. Well, just take some cell samples. In addition, I need to test the chromosomes of all the half-dragons and dragon-blooded monsters in your territory, and register their conditions and special abilities. It's a small matter, I'll order them over immediately. By the way, you might as well go to my territory, it's more convenient." "Well, if you can, I'll do it in Lord Andre's territory too." "That's no problem. Father, let me go and tell you Vaska originally thought that he wanted treasure and reward, but when he heard that it was just this request, he immediately agreed. He is his father's eldest son, and even though he has left home and is independent, he is still his father's beloved son. The half-dragons under my command just scratched their mouths and registered the situation. You can make the decision directly without asking your father about this kind of thing." For Greet, this request was like pie in the sky. Vaska gave an order, and all the half-dragons and dragon-blooded monsters in his territory, as well as the half-dragons and dragon-blooded monsters in Cyrilla's parents' territory, all reported to Greet. Bernard was responsible for sampling, Udian and Ash Moonsong were responsible for inquiry and registration, and Cyrilla was responsible for sorting out the information. Greet was only responsible for presiding over the experiment and giving the oak staff the order to arrange and combine the compared chromosome points to determine which point did what. In addition to exhausting the oak staff to death, Greet only spent half a month to compare a thick stack of results. Dragon scales, dragon wings, dragon tail, thorns, dragon teeth, hard armor, thick skin, strength, body shape, ice control, wind control, floating. When Vaska came again, he laid out a thick stack of information in front of his future uncle, fanned it out, and almost filled the entire table. According to the current research results, the chromosomes corresponding to these abilities and characteristics have basically been determined. There are also these segments of chromosomes, which basically every half-dragon and dragon-blooded monster has. It is speculated that they are the characteristics shared by the dragon blood transformation. These segments must be inserted in order to withstand other characteristics. More chromosomes may have other functions, or they may just be inserted randomly, which actually reduces the carrying capacity of the subject. Vaska stared at this pile of information, with swirls in his silver blue eyes, and he felt a little dizzy looking at the entire dragon. Even if he takes the caster route, unlike his sister who takes the warrior route, it would be a headache for him to fully master such complicated research. So what do you want to say? My idea is that the previous magic circle was made of dragon blood, modified on a large scale, and dragon chromosomes were inserted into the subjects. Greet had already made a plan, so he answered calmly and confidently. The advantage of doing this is that the method is more mature, but the disadvantage is that the inserted chromosomes are relatively random, and redundant chromosomes are prone to appear. I am thinking about whether I can select a few of these fragments and insert them in a targeted manner. Can it be done? Vaska frowned. Gretel answered uncertainly. When I was on Everlasting Island, I did directional enhancement and directional killing, but I haven't done directional insertion yet, but the principles should be similar. The magic circle needs to be modified, and it also needs to be powered and connected to the previous transformed magic circle. It's not too difficult. Vaska immediately expressed his confidence. Magic circle transformation is my strength. When the time comes, take out your magic circle and we will study it together. What else? Also, I'm afraid that not enough fragments have been inserted, and some necessary fragments have been missed, resulting in the death of the subject. However, experiments are still necessary. Then you do it. Vaska waved his hand carelessly. I will first allocate 10 people and 10 monsters to you to conduct experiments first. After using them, if the results are not produced, or if you are not satisfied with the results, then ask my guard leader for them. Emma, if this method is used to enlighten the half-dragon, it means that he does not have to pay for dragon blood, at least not a lot. Even for an adult dragon, bleeding too much will affect his growth in strength. Using this method, he can transform as many subordinates as he wants. Isn't this really a waste of human life? Although Greet felt that this method was a bit unreliable, he could only start with the conversion of Warcraft first. Anyway, the ready-made magic circle, the one used to transform Turnbaka and the others, is still there. It is not too difficult to change condensing energy and modifying chromosome points into extraordinary points to condensing energy and inserting special fragments into chromosomes. As for the source of energy, it is naturally a treat from Vaska. The first experiment, inserting the cornerstone chromosomes, and the dragon scale and dragon tooth chromosomes, begins. Gretel gave the order. Servilia replaces the world tree and controls the magic circle. The oak staff and the mobile tower spirit work together to determine the special fragment to be inserted. The captain of Vaska's guard held a long knife in his hand and stood outside the magic circle, ready to chop off the head of the out-of-control monster at any time when the binding force of the magic circle failed. The magic circle is activated. Energy is introduced. Chromosomes are locked. 3, 2, 1, start. Ouch. In the magic circle, A demon wolf that was specially selected as a test subject screamed loudly. Vaska leaned on the edge of the magic circle, touched his chin, and frowned slightly. It's struggling very little, the pain is not too severe, it's not like it was so painful that it was about to die, is this okay? Whether it would work or not, Greet didn't know. He waited patiently for a day and a night, and the light of the magic circle finally dimmed. The demon wolf that was the test subject was covered in blood, staggered, and fell to the ground. The breath of life has not been enhanced much, it has only been improved by one level. The teeth have become longer and take on the shape of dragon teeth. Dragon scales, there are none under the skin, nor where the claws are exposed. The upper limit is increased, unknown. Judging from the results, we can't say it's completely successful. The effect is not very good, we still have to keep trying. Greet recorded the data one by one, muttering, not satisfied. Vaska had already slapped him on the shoulder. Well done. I'll leave the rest to you. What else do you need? Just say it. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1471. What Gretel needs is, of course, more experimental subjects, more experimental materials, and, of course, more experiments. But before asking for something, he decided to play it safe, observe it for a few days, and then adjust his experimental methods based on the observation results. Soon, he was glad that he was cautious enough. The first experiment finally failed. The demon wolf didn't know what was wrong. 3 days later, he gradually developed fatigue, weak legs, and weakness. 5 days later, inability to digest food, loose stools, bloody stools, and various abnormalities began to appear. Looks like a bit of a genetic meltdown. But I'm not sure. Maybe there are other reasons that can be treated with treatment. Gretel wanted to keep it under observation and try to save it. However, Vaska's dragon nest guard captain, who was also the first dragon-blooded kin transformed by Vaska, the cloud giant Rumua, blocked him angrily. Don't look at it. Those who have been transformed successfully will be jumping around after they recover, eating and drinking, and their strength will be greatly strengthened. Those who are desperate for death will definitely die, and they will die very quickly. Only those who succeed are qualified to stand in front of the dragon's nest. The great dragon doesn't need losers. Okay. Greet sighed, not wanting to say anything else. Since he doesn't feel bad even if he dies, he can only use some magic and cheat decisively. The modified chromosomes of the demon wolf have been collected and measured. Now, Gretel drew the magic circle and asked someone to carry the magic wolf inside. He held a tube of diluted silver dragon blood in his left hand and a diamond in his right hand, naturally an artificial version. He closed his eyes slightly and began to meditate. I need to complete the chromosomes of this demon wolf and restore it to a healthy and strong state. I will improve and complete it on the basis of the transformation and complete the required chromosome fragments. I hope it comes from the dragon clan as much as possible. He babbled and babbled, trying to set the conditions for the limited wishing technique in as much detail as possible. The most important thing about whether this spell is successful or not is the condition setting. The more detailed the conditions, the higher the probability of success. With the various test results of Demon Wolf and the chromosome strips, he had simulated it 7 or 8 times in the Emerald Dream. At this moment, according to the most successful version of the simulation, the spell is released. The diamond in his hand turned into ashes, and the silver dragon's blood disappeared without a trace. The entire magic circle aroused a mysterious magical light, which fell on the demon wolf. From the fine hairs on the tips of the ears to the end of the tail, clean it up and disappear quietly. Okay. Greed clapped his hands, threw another healing spell to the demon wolf to maintain its vital signs, and stood up leisurely. 3 mage hands flew out, one up and down, opening its mouth. The third one flew in and scratched its upper jaw. The demon wolf obediently opened its mouth and allowed him to manipulate it, perhaps because of its weakness. Gretel finished taking the sample, threw it into the microscope nearby for analysis, and stood up leisurely. Please, please, help me take care of you for a few more days, he smiled and asked Rum. Grow it for a few days without any additional intervention. Make sure it is alive, or dead. Just let me know. If it is the best, compare the chromosomes before and after, and you will know what is missing and what is added. Unfortunately, if he dies, if it is determined to be a genetic collapse, it will be equivalent to eliminating a wrong answer and starting from scratch again. He asked for help, and Lum could only respond respectfully. He didn't need to do anything, just circle a piece of land for the demon wolf, let it lie down, and feed it with water and food on time, and don't let it be bitten to death. He doesn't have to do this kind of thing himself, he can just instruct his subordinates at will. However, Gretel's next mission is a bit troublesome. Find me some wild beasts and low-level monsters, arrange them by level, and let me transform them one by one. Start transforming the monsters directly, the cost is still too high. This mission is not dangerous, just troublesome. Wild beasts and low-level monsters are never in the adult silver dragon's diet, or even near the dragon's lair. Because of the dragon's power, these things are basically emptied. Since Gretel gave the order, he had no choice but to send out his subordinates and order the intelligent races in the territory to search all over the mountains and fields and pay tribute. Within 2 days, Gretel received a litter of wild boars, 3 wild sheep, 2 deer, a small group of wolves, 2 foxes, and several nests of rabbits. There was also an unexpected patient. I didn't dare to disturb you, Sir Rum stood 10 meters away, bowing respectfully and reporting to Gretel. However, Old Matt of the Fire Crow tribe is the best wizard in the territory, and his people are also the most diligent in this worship. Probably because he is tired, Old Matt has a severe headache, so he can only ask the adults to show him look. Gretel didn't mind seeing one more patient. He was even happy to have a few more patients to see besides his daily research. Taking samples every day, looking at chromosomes, looking at chromosomes, looking at chromosomes, he was almost rusty. The conscience of heaven and earth, he is a doctor, not a scientific researcher, he still prefers to treat people. The Fire Crow tribe are a group of dwarfs. Gretel was surprised when he saw 2 guys who were no higher than his chest and wearing tall pointed hats pushing a cart and bringing patients in. Flat car. Flat car. The car they use is a flat car with universal wheels that can turn in all directions. When he was in Nevis, if he could make a flat car like this, why would he have to let barbarians carry a stretcher when he came in and out? But this surprise was only for a moment. Gretel's attention was quickly attracted by the patients on the flat car. The old man with snow-white and sparse hair had his eyes closed tightly and curled up into a shrimp on the bed. He frowned and pressed his temples with his hands, obviously in great pain. Ah, I'm going to die, I'm really going to die, help me, help me. Where does it hurt? Gretel knelt down in front of him. The old dwarf opened his eyes slightly, glanced at Greet, and immediately wanted to roll off the carriage, but Greet held him down. Don't salute, don't move. Now tell me, where does it hurt? Headache. It hurts so much. It hurts so much. I have a headache. Gretel sighed. His first reaction was to give him a pain relief spell, and his second reaction was to call the neurology department for consultation. For this kind of disease that won't die in a while, the emergency department doesn't care much. If you can, leave it to a specialist, then leave it to a specialist. However, the cause of the disease was not clear, and direct pain relief was a clinical taboo, so colleagues from the Department of Neurology did not follow him through time. There is CT and MRI, and Gretel can barely act as a god, but the god inside is really respectful and insensitive. But the patient had already arrived and was in his hands, so he could only bite the bullet and make a differential diagnosis. He pressed the old dwarf's shoulders with both hands and stared into his eyes. "Listen to me. Answer my question. Where does it hurt in your head? Front? Back? Top of head? Left side? Right side? Near the scalp? Or somewhere deeper? It hurts so much, it's very deep, there are bugs biting me, snakes biting me, ah! Don't kill me, don't kill me." The old dwarf groaned in reply, and soon began to shout again. Greed frowned. "What's the situation? Delirium? Epilepsy? Or hallucinations? Brain diseases often have this kind of symptom, but it's not certain." He tried hard to hold the old dwarf down and continued to ask. "How does it hurt? Dull pain? Throbbing pain? Stinging pain? Jumping pain? My brain feels like it's been split open, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. I heard you can split my head open to save people, please split my head open. Please." Ah, this is how communication with a patient is. What he answers is rarely what you need to know. Gretel sighed secretly, raised his hand, and threw a blood pressure monitoring spell. 158/105. According to the standards of normal adults, it is indeed high blood pressure, but it is only high blood pressure level 1 and has just reached the level of high blood pressure level 2. If it can cause such a severe headache, I am afraid it is not enough. However, for a dwarf, maybe it has reached level 3 hypertension, severe hypertension? To know this, you need a wide range of data. Gretel turned his eyes and looked at the two dwarfs who were bringing the patient over. "Come here. Lie down. Lie down in a row. Be quiet, relax, don't exercise, don't talk. Are there any other tribesmen here? If so, call them all." The two middle-aged dwarfs lay on their backs tremblingly. The subordinates next to the cloud giant Lum ran away to call. After a while, light and rapid footsteps sounded outside, and 7 or 8 young dwarfs followed in. As soon as they entered the door, Greet ordered them to lie down together, relax, not to talk or move, and not to be nervous. In order to ensure the effect, Greet also specially threw a group pacification spell before taking the measurement. Well, the general blood pressure of young dwarfs is around 110/70, which is about the same as normal humans. The old man's blood pressure is a bit high. Is it a headache caused by malignant hypertension? I threw a round of pain relief spells and soothing tranquility spells first, and watched old Matt's blood pressure plummet, all the way down to 142/97. It is still high, but it has improved a lot. Relieving the pain does help lower blood pressure. How many years have you had this headache? It's been many years, my lord, it's been many years. I've had pain since I was young. I get headaches when I stay up late, I get headaches when I'm angry, and I definitely get headaches when I cast too many spells. How old is he? How is his health? 58 years old, sir. My health is usually in good shape. Apart from the headaches, my health is in great shape. I can run, jump, and hit people. All kinds of things in our tribe are done under his guidance. The middle-aged dwarf who pushed him in was finally allowed to get up, nodded and bowed beside him, and answered respectfully. Greet immediately frowned tightly. If high blood pressure causes headaches, such a severe headache must mean high blood pressure. Moreover, if you have malignant hypertension for such a long time, let's say 20 years, you want to be able to run, jump and hit people? Target organ damage can knock someone down. I'm afraid this headache is not caused by high blood pressure, and we need to find another reason. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 1472. Since it is not caused by high blood pressure, we need to find another reason. While Gretel was writing down his medical history, he chatted casually with the old dwarf, and the two middle-aged dwarfs also added to his information. As we chatted, we found out that the old dwarf had married 4 wives since he was married at the age of 15, and had given birth to 12 children to him. Sons and daughters, there are more than 30 people in total, and the children have grandchildren, and the grandchildren have children. The descendants of one person support half of the tribe. Fortunately, dwarfs don't take up much space and don't eat much. To make something jingling, it also requires more people and strength. If a race like the frost giants and cloud giants married so many people and had so many children, they would have no choice but to wage war. Although Old Mart is a spellcaster, he is not the kind of person who can only mutter spells and throw some windblade skates. On a daily basis, he is like other dwarves, picking up hammers, wrenches, etc., knocking, smashing, and making devices. One of the middle-aged dwarfs was his son. He brought along a hammer used by his old father. Gretel took it and weighed it. It was not light in weight. He can drink alcohol and eat meat. Even at this age, he still has nearly 30 teeth in his mouth, making a crunching sound when chewing chicken bones. This situation shows that he is in good health and looks less like he has been suffering from high blood pressure for 20 years. Then what should I do when he usually has a headache? How to treat it? If you have a headache, drink alcohol, or chew some medicinal herbs or smoke some medicinal cigarettes, the old dwarf replied tremblingly. The dragon master took pity on me and treated me twice. I was cured at that time, but relapsed after a while. Without waiting for Greet to ask, he waved his finger, and the other son hurriedly took out a pile of leaves, grass roots, dried mushrooms, dried flowers, and various unknown objects, and laid them out one by one. Gretel frowned immediately. The medicinal properties of herbs have always been his weakness. Even if he memorized the names of these strange plants, he probably couldn't relate them to his previous life. It is normal for a plant to have dozens of names in different places and different races. Although the identification technique could tell him what this thing was called and what its medicinal properties were, it was not consistent with the pharmacology he had learned. Asking more carefully, most of these herbs were used in sacrificial ceremonies. Even he frowned seriously. The medicinal herbs used in sacrificial rituals by indigenous tribes are said to be able to improve spirituality and connect to the gods. Most of them are either hallucinogenic drugs or narcotic drugs. A small number may be central analgesic drugs. In any case, these drugs have no reference value for the cause of the disease. Gretel wanted to figure out why the old dwarf had a headache, or he had to rely on himself. The causes of headaches are extremely complex. In addition to migraines, cluster headaches, tension headaches, and trigeminal neuralgia with autonomic symptoms, there are also a large number of secondary headaches with various causes. Primary headaches are roughly equivalent to the cause is currently unknown or modern medicine has not understood its mechanism of occurrence. Apart from throwing painkillers, greed has nothing to do for the time being. Secondary headaches need to be investigated slowly. In addition to malignant hypertension, greed could think of other brain diseases such as intracranial infection, intracranial mass occupying, and cerebral hemorrhage. Headaches caused by toothache, glaucoma, rhinitis, sinusitis, cervical spondylosis and other head and neck diseases. Headaches caused by alcoholism, poisoning, electrolyte disorders, endocrine disorders, various medical diseases. Gretel felt like he had a headache just thinking about so many possibilities. There is no choice, as a doctor, I can only continue to check. Come on, let's do a CT scan first, and then an MRI. The old dwarf stared at him blankly, hearing the incomprehensible words in his mouth as if he were reading from heaven, but he did not dare to ask any questions. The high-level spellcasters on the left and right all have some nagging words, so there is no need to delve into them, just obey them. Sure enough, Gretel immediately gave instructions. Well, you don't need to do anything extra. Come on, take off your clothes, don't leave any metal objects, and stand on this board. Yes, just stand. Buzz buzz, buzz buzz buzz. The magic circle lit up one by one, and the huge magic power rolled over and flattened. Gretel stared at the images released by the oak staff, looking at each one carefully, and then asked the old dwarf. During the recent period, has your walking been normal? Is your running and jumping normal? Have you seen anything blurry? Are there any hand-eye coordination problems when using any device? No. No, no, the old dwarf shook his head quickly, pulled out a box, and held it in both hands. This is a cup I made a few days ago. I made it for more than a month and just finished it the day before yesterday. Look at the texture of the gold wire and the gems inlaid on it. It's very good. There are no flaws at all. Gretel took it and looked at it carefully. On the silver cup as big as a human head, thin gold wires were used to coil out patterns of figures hunting and birds and animals running. The gold wire lines were smooth, and the gemstones were inlaid perfectly. The silver cup is shiny and has no traces of oxidation. It has fine chisel lines and sharp edges. It is obvious that it was made not long ago. I secretly threw another identification skill, and the feedback was last week's. Well, this situation at least shows that the old dwarf has no neurological dysfunction. Greet breathed a sigh of relief. Combining head MRI and CT, he ruled out another possibility. Malignant brain tumors develop very quickly. I heard from my colleagues in Chennai that young patients often develop out of control in 2 or 3 months, and it is too late to save them. I feel very sorry for them. Although benign tumors develop slowly, if you survive with the tumor for more than 20 years, the symptoms will gradually worsen, and recurrence is possible. Repeated recurrence without neurological dysfunction is impossible. Thank God, there is no intracranial mass, and there is unlikely to be intracranial hypertension. Greet chose CT and MRI first. Another reason is that these 2 examinations are non-invasive examinations. To measure intracranial pressure, the simplest method he knew was to perform a lumbar puncture and measure cerebrospinal fluid. It looks scary, and the patient may not accept it. Even if he accepts it, what is the normal intracranial pressure of a dwarf? He still has to perform waist piercing on each of these dwarfs, right? In addition, there is good news. According to the results of CT and MRI, there is no cerebral hemorrhage or cerebral infarction. As for the cerebral vascular malformation, at first glance, the cerebral blood vessels are quite normal. There is nothing particularly strange or obvious stenosis. It should not be the case. Intracranial infection is also unlikely. Without timely symptomatic treatment every time, without a large amount of antibiotics, and relying on a little unknown herbal medicine for pain relief and anesthesia, do you want to survive 20 years? Gretel swore that if such a thing really happened, his last name would be the Old Dwarf. Well, the surname Nordmark belongs to the original person anyway, not to him. To rule out cranial problems, there is no need to open a craniotomy, let alone perform a craniotomy while awake. There are other head and neck issues to consider. So, glaucoma. Greet had already paid attention to the first wave of physical examinations when the patients were brought in just now. The pupils on both sides are equal and round, the pupils are of normal size, sensitive to light reflection, and the conjunctiva is not congested. If it is chronic angle closure glaucoma, resulting in a sharp increase in intraocular pressure and repeated attacks of headaches and dizziness, the eyes will generally become red, and the conjunctiva will be congested and edematous. Moreover, the sympathetic nerves will be excited, causing the pupils to dilate. These symptoms are all connected together and can be understood at a glance. When he was an emergency doctor in his previous life, he also examined many patients with severe headaches. After the examination, he found that several of them had glaucoma. The eyes looked completely different from those of the old dwarf. Toothache. Rhinitis. Sinusitis. Gretel asked the old man to open his mouth and take a look at his teeth, and then scanned it with a CT scan to make sure that the teeth were not rotten. In terms of listening, speaking, appearance, and images, there are no obvious lesions on the nose. Speaking of headaches that have lasted for 20 or 30 years, if they were caused by toothache, rhinitis, or sinusitis, what would they look like? I do have some problems with my cervical spine. For craftsmen who often lower their heads and knock, it is normal to have some occupational diseases. But looking at the narrow part, it doesn't appear to be compressing the nerves in the brain. I used detoxification technique twice more, but no results came out. Lead poisoning, organophosphorus poisoning. Does organophosphorus exist in this era, and other possible poisonings should be ruled out? Alas, when the patient opens his mouth, the doctor breaks his legs. If this was a tertiary level hospital in his previous life, he would probably have opened orders, and the patient's family and patients would go for check UPS and break legs one by one. Now he does the MRI, he does the CT, he does the tests, if any, he does all the outpatient imaging surgeries by himself, and he is the only one doing the so-called troubleshooting. Ah, what is the reason? Gretel lowered his head, meditating. I dare not pinch the bridge of my nose, rub my temples, knock my head, or roll around. As the patient's attending physician, he must not appear hesitant in front of the patient. This will seriously affect the patient's confidence in the doctor, and thus affect the patient's compliance. You can think about it for a while, but if it shows that you are confused, have no ideas, and have no direction, you can only find a superior doctor to end it. There is no old director here, no senior directors from other departments, and no experts from outside hospitals. He himself is the highest ranking doctor, and he must hold on. But I really can't think of the possibility, should it be determined to be a primary headache? There is no good solution for primary headaches, other than taking painkillers regularly. Now it seems that the effect of painkillers is getting less and less effective on the old dwarf. In fact, he could also say, I've cured you, go back and take care of yourself, don't overwork yourself, don't drink too much, be too excited, and eat light. However, as a doctor, I know that this statement seems to appease the patient, but in fact it is equivalent to I have not found any cause of the disease. The patient may not understand, but the doctor himself has surrendered to the cause of the disease. Over and over again, blood oxygen, blood pressure, blood lipids, and blood coagulation were measured, but no problem could be found. Gretel sighed and was about to give the final medical advice, when suddenly an idea flashed in his mind. Wait, let's do another check. Thanks to @Golden Wrench for the 500 starting coins reward. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 1473. You say it, you say it. I will do whatever you say. Hearing Greet ask for his opinion, the old dwarf nodded quickly. Just kidding, if the adults from Dragon's Nest are willing to treat him, they are giving him great dignity and asking him to do a checkup. Is there anything he can't do? And so far, I have just brushed strange light on him, doing electrocardiogram, measuring blood pressure, measuring blood oxygen, etc. Ask him to stand on a board and rotate, hold his breath and exhale as required, do head and neck CT, head and neck MRI. Draw a little blood from him, to measure blood sugar, blood lipids, etc. Hey, this little bit of blood is nothing. Greet smiled. He directed the old dwarf to lie down, unbutton his shirt, and expose his chest. Then, he couldn't help but said alas. By the way, I can understand that savages have thick chest hair. I can understand giants having thick chest hair. Even those knights in Nevis all have dark, thick, and long chest hair that needs to be shaved before they can do an echocardiogram. I can understand that. But you are a dwarf. Dwarf. You're playing with your brains, not your physical strength. What's the point of having such thick chest hair? Well, I have married 4 wives, a total of 12 women, and have given birth to more than 30 children. It is not surprising to have such thick chest hair. You shaved your chest hair first. He stroked his forehead and waved his fingers. Alas, that's all for the hair on other parts of the body. For the hair that protects the heart, it's better to shave it off if you can. What a waste of time if it comes time to do a cardiac ultrasound. What? The old dwarf subconsciously crossed his arms. Before he could protest, 2 middle-aged dwarfs swarmed up to him, stretched his arms, poured water, applied soap, waved the razor, brush, brush, brush. With decisive movements, quick handling, and light and precise movements, he is worthy of being a dwarf known for his exquisite craftsmanship. Greet estimated that if a barbarian was asked to shave his chest hair, he would probably be pasted with a lump of beeswax, and then wait for the beeswax to dry, and then tear it off directly, right? Before Greet could react, large piles of black and white fur fell to the ground. He only blinked a few times, and the old dwarf's chest was clean and flat, with all the stubble shaved off. Well, with a chest like this, it would be more comfortable to do an echocardiogram. Gretel applied glycerin, pressed his palms, and activated the bee ultrasound magic with ease. The eyes are slightly closed, the blood flowing from the heart is vividly present. Well, there are microbubbles in the left atrium. Judging from the location, it should be at the interatrial septum and fossa ovale, with a small right to left shunt. The bubbles are very small and the defects are not large. If you don't pay attention, they are almost impossible to see. Gretel narrowed his eyes subconsciously. Stop for a moment and give the command softly. Listen to my words clearly, follow the order, and do a set of actions. First take 2 deep breaths, then close your throat tightly and listen to me count 5 times. After counting, exhale forcefully, but still close your throat tightly to prevent the breath from actually exhaling. Understand? If this order were to be carried out by barbarians or ogres, most of them would probably have to blink their eyes, exhale, and hold their breath. The old dwarf thought about it carefully, then took 2 deep breaths, raised his fingers on the bed, and counted 5 times in a row. Then exhale forcefully, say oops again, and start over again. After trying it back and forth twice, I nodded lightly on the bed and whispered, I understand. Gretel was very pleased and asked him to do it again. It felt like there was no air leaking out near his mouth and nose when he exhaled, so he had obviously learned it. He paused for a moment to let the old dwarf relax and restore the oxygen content in his blood. Seeing that his face recovered, he began to order. Breathe deeply, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, exhale. Bang, bang, bang. After completing this set of movements, within 3 cardiac cycles, the microbubbles in the left atrium were particularly obvious. Patent foramen ovale, diameter, 3 mm, Greet thought silently in his mind. He opened his eyes and quickly looked at the old dwarf's figure. Based on the size of the heart seen in the echocardiogram, he calculated the ratio of the dwarf's heart to that of a human, and the diameter of the foramen ovale was equivalent to the size of a human. Well, it's almost 4 mm. It's a relatively big one. This was really a flash of inspiration. In his previous life, while chatting with colleagues before a certain meeting, he once heard a colleague from Sheena talk about such a case. There was an old patient who had recurring headaches and could not find the cause. Later, he came across an academic paper, which pointed out that there is sometimes a correlation between patent foramen ovale and migraines, and that sealing the foramen ovale can help treat migraines. Treating a dead horse as a live doctor, this colleague asked for help from the cardiology department, diagnosed the symptoms of patent foramen ovale, and persuaded, fooled, the patient to undergo a closure operation. Later, the patient's migraine actually got better. In his excitement, the patient actually gave him a miracle rejuvenation banner. He never thought about the relationship between heart surgery and headaches. Well, I may have found the cause of your headache, Gretel clapped his hands. But he found it? He used his secret vision to look at the whole body of the old dwarf, especially his brain, to make sure there was no energy accumulation. He is really not good at energy conflict. In a comfortable mood, he didn't mind giving away a handful of spells for free, and waved his hand with satisfaction. A cleaning technique passed by, and the glycerin on the old dwarf's chest disappeared instantly. This looks much better than the scumbag behavior of throwing a pile of straw paper at him and telling him to wipe it yourself. Moreover, it is very efficient and clean, which makes people feel comfortable. The old dwarf immediately opened his eyes wide. Although Gretel said it was possible to find it, his tone and attitude all revealed that I am very sure. He asked with some trepidation. Found it, what's the reason? Well, your heart is a little bit undeveloped. Gretel pointed at his heart, and then showed him the shadow of the heart. It's a gap here. It should have grown 10 days and a half after birth, but it didn't completely grow. When the heart beats, blood will leak through it, which will cause you a headache. The old dwarf half understood what he said, but seeing Greet's confident look, he couldn't refute. After struggling for a long time, I asked carefully. But my heart is leaking a little blood, why do I have a headache? This is quite far away. Even if it leaks, it's still leaking in the chest, so it won't hurt my head anyway. Well, there is a story. The specific mechanism by which patent foramen ovale causes migraines is indeed unclear. Of course, there is speculation. Most researchers believe that under conditions of increased right heart pressure such as breath holding and coughing, certain neurohumoral substances that can cause headaches directly enter the systemic circulation through the unclosed foramen ovale, causing migraine symptoms. If the foramen ovale is closed normally, they should be directly metabolized and degraded in the pulmonary circulation. But to explain this in detail, we need to explain what is pulmonary circulation and what is systemic circulation. What are those substances? For example, what other substances are there besides 5-hydroxytryptamine, and their degradation and metabolism processes? Research reports show that migraines are closely related to patent foramen ovale. Looking back now, Greet still remembers the way his colleague from Shinnockai grabbed the journal and showed off to him proudly. Especially for migraine with aura, the probability of migraine with aura in patients with patent foramen ovale is as high as 46.3% to 88%, and the probability of migraine with non-aura is 16.2% to 34.9%. 1. There is also increasing data showing that some ischemic strokes that were once considered to be of unknown cause were later confirmed to be related to patent foramen ovale. I am considering suggesting to the superiors that in the future, when I see unexplained headaches, I will send everyone to have a cardiac color Doppler ultrasound. Now that heaven and man are separated, he has no choice but to silently recall the voice, appearance of his divine colleague in his mind. No, he is the one who traveled through time, and it should be others who recall his voice, appearance. Gretel smiled helplessly to himself. I couldn't explain clearly, and I had to convince the patient, so I had to keep a straight face and pretend to be dignified. According to my rich medical experience, your headache is most likely related to heart problems. As long as you perform a small treatment and close the gap, there is a high probability that your problem will be solved. Do I need to cut my heart open? The old dwarf's face turned pale. He subconsciously crossed his arms and tightly protected his chest. Thinking about it, something felt wrong. The master of Dragon Nest wanted to cut his heart open. Could he still resist? I'm afraid that if I lie down and let others slaughter me, I can still keep the whole tribe safe, but if I struggle to resist, it will bring harm to the whole tribe. Feeling discouraged at this thought, he let go of his arms and lay back like a salted fish, with only one pair of eyes staring sadly at Gretel, expecting him to change his mind. Gretel sighed and said warmly, "There is no need to cut open the heart. In fact, unless it is absolutely necessary, we try not to open the heart and cause too much damage to the patient. If we can use other methods, use other methods." He didn't say it was okay, but said, "Unless it's absolutely necessary, try not to cut open the chest." The old dwarf shivered more and more, and sweat oozed from his forehead, cheeks, and chest that had just been shaved. "Unless it is absolutely necessary, try not to betray your heart." Does that mean that you will still betray your heart when it is absolutely necessary? No. Although when I had a headache, I kept saying cut my head in half, but now that the pain is gone, I still don't want to die. This can it not be cured? I'm afraid it still needs treatment. Greet sighed. There is a defect in the heart. If you leave it alone, big problems will occur in the future. For example, the congestion will flow to the brain and block the blood vessels in the brain, which will lead to paralysis and death. 1. Lip PZ, Lip GY, Patent Foramen Ovale and Migraine Attacks, A Systematic Review, American Journal of Medicine, 2014, 127, 5 pages 411-420. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1474. What? Will you still be paralyzed? Will you die? The old dwarf sat up in shock when he was dying of illness. He was originally lying like a salted fish, but now he couldn't help but bounce a little on the bed. Gretel looked at him sincerely, and with a slight hook of his fingers, the three-dimensional model of the heart appeared again. "Look, here and here should have been sealed, but you made a hole here. When you make a hole, there will be a long tunnel, and the blood will condense here." As he spoke, he waved his hand again, and the light and shadow flashed in the room, and a winding, wide and narrow river appeared, and the sandy river water was tumbling in the river. "Look, is it easy for sediment to accumulate in such river channels, where they turn and change in width? The same goes for blood, which has a natural ability to coagulate. In such a long and slender tunnel, it is particularly easy to coagulate. In fact, a colleague from Shanghai once boasted to him that he had indeed seen a small thrombus in the foramen ovale tunnel during cardiac ultrasound. There was a sound of gasping around him. The dwarfs exchanged glances with each other, their faces pale, and some of them had raised their hands to press their temples. I don't know if headaches are a common phenomenon among this group of people. Even the cloud giant Lum listened. He was ordered to run errands for Gretel, hoping that he would cure the old dwarf's disease with a pat of his hand, and then continue working for his master. Who knew that Greet had completed one examination after another, one dwarf after another. At the end of the investigation, he simply explained the cause of the disease to the old dwarf in a friendly manner, without feeling bored at all. What's there to say to these guys? Treat it however you want, how dare you not treat it? The cloud giant Rum listened with some boredom, but because Gretel was the superior and could not interrupt his explanation, he directly kicked the dwarfs out. It was only now that I heard it, and I got a taste of it. Alas, if the Dragon Master can be so patient when treating me, it would actually be very good. He thought silently. And Gretel has already manifested a blood vessel, winding upward from the heart and entering the brain. And a tiny blood clot is flowing along the blood vessels to the brain. If such a blood clot flows into your brain and blocks the blood vessels in your brain, This piece of brain will die, then, you will either be paralyzed or die. When a blood clot enters the brain, the result is self-evident, a stroke. The old dwarf's complexion has turned from white to green, from green to purple, from purple to white, and is slightly transparent. He trembled. Then, how will you treat it? If it were a few years ago, or when he first arrived on Evermeet Island, Gretel might have used vines to guide healing. But now, thanks to the changes in the little snake, Gretel has a better way. Don't worry, it's very simple. Look dash. He raised his hand and hooked it, and a 3-foot-long snake with black stripes on a white background wrapped around his arm and slowly appeared. Greet stroked the little snake's head and said softly, "This little snake can switch between the physical and incorporeal bodies. I will let it enter your body in its incorporeal state, guide my healing spells, and make this place in your heart grow well. It's very convenient, fast, and almost painless and dangerous." As he spoke, he spread his palms and gave orders with his mind, letting the little snake penetrate into his palms in an incorporeal state, and then poke its head out from the back of his hands. Demonstrate this several times, stare into the other person's eyes, and say seriously, "This is currently the most convenient and most effective method. Do you want to give it a try? I don't mean to start the treatment right now, but I want you to try it and let the incorporeal snake pass through your body. If you confirm that this is painless and not terrible, let's move on to the next step." "No, come on," the old dwarf suddenly interrupted. He lay back straight, closed his eyes, and pushed his chest up. After a pause, he opened his eyes again and said sincerely, "My lord, you are very considerate of me for being willing to tell me so much. At this point, I still have to ask questions and try again and again, but I don't know what to do. Sir, please do it." This "please do something" doesn't sound like treatment, but rather like asking me to amputate my limbs with an axe, Gretel silently complained. Not far away, the cloud giant Rum had already snorted. "That's pretty much it. Gretel, rightward arrow. Rightward arrow. Hey, don't mock my patience. I'm still here. Don't make fun of me in front of me or disrupt the medical order." Gretel gave the other person a warning look. Seeing Giant Yoon lowering his head and bowing, he took 2 steps back meaningfully, thought about it to himself, and sighed quietly. Maybe Lum's thoughts are the norm in this world. Let alone this world, it was the same even in his previous life. People have the same mind and the same principles. If it weren't for the repeated propaganda of medical ethics and the constant restrictions and beatings from hospitals, superior doctors, medical offices, and health bureaus, in fact, doctors would often feel this way. I've already told you how to treat it, so why don't you just pay the money, sign the signature, go for an examination, and then come over for treatment? What are you waiting for? I am a doctor, I wish you the best, and I will not harm you. Hurry, the longer you delay, the worse the situation will be. Especially young doctors who are just starting out are more likely to feel impatient. Only after you have experienced a lot, seen all kinds of life, all kinds of misery and helplessness, can you slowly understand. Although good health is a universal need of human beings, not all needs in this world can be realized. No money, no time to see a doctor, no one to accompany you, and don't want your loved ones to be burdened with debt. Any reason may cause the patient or family members to say he died or quietly leave the hospital. At this time, doctors who have not been repeatedly beaten by society will become angry and resentful, and they will catch patients and persuade them repeatedly, and even quarrel with patients. What will happen if patients have the right to know and decide is not made an iron rule? If the decision-making power rests with the doctor, who can guarantee that the doctor will not take the patient for treatment on the grounds of "I am doing it for your own good" or just to practice his own skills? In his previous life, when there was no restraint from medical ethics, all kinds of incredible events occurred. No matter what, he himself still has to adhere to medical ethics. In the future, it is best for the students he teaches to fix certain practices in the form of oaths. Gretel took a deep breath and let it out. When he turned around to face the old dwarf Matt, he had become pleasant again. Don't be afraid. This kind of treatment should not cause any pain. But in order to prevent you from being nervous and moving around, I will first release a tranquilizing spell so that you can't feel any pain and can't move. Then I started therapy. Just lie down and relax, close your eyes, and take a nap. I will do everything. The old dwarf nodded. Soon, he remembered Gretel's words again, closed his eyes quickly, and lay down straight. Greet smiled reassuringly at him and waved everyone around to exit. No one was allowed to come in without his call. Then, first a tranquility spell was thrown, followed closely by the vital sign monitoring magic, which was fully launched. Then, the little snake rose up from his arm, silently, and sank into the old dwarf's chest. Greet closed his eyes slightly, and what he saw in the little snake's eyes quietly unfolded in his meditation world. Skin, muscles, bones, pleura. Enter the chest, enter the pericardium, enter the heart, the ventricles, the atria. The left atrial appendage, pectinate muscles arranged one by one, and then the smooth left atrial sinus, the openings of the pulmonary veins on both sides of the posterior wall. Search from the place opposite to the pulmonary vein, opposite to the right atrium, between the right atrium and the left atrium. Search carefully on the diaphragm to find the location of the fossa ovale. Found it? There is no normally closed foramen ovale, right here. Gretel gave the order quietly in his heart. The very small part of the snake's head changes from virtual to real. Not four hollow, venomous snake teeth, but a small row of sesame-like, thin incisors like humans. The incisors close together and bite off a very fine layer on the diaphragm of the oval fossa. Bite, swallow, bite again, swallow again. The little snake's work was carried out extremely quietly and very quickly. Gretel had been watching the electrocardiogram closely, but he did not notice any violent disturbances in the old dwarf's hard work. The wound was bitten here, and the healing technique on Greet's hand immediately followed. In the dim white light, the septum secundum and septum primum of the interatrial septum, a thin layer of fibrous tissue that is constantly swinging, and a layer of thicker muscular tissue, continue to grow towards each other. The little snake finished its bite, and in the illusory vision, the two layers of the fossa ovale had grown together. Gretel patiently guided him for a while, making sure that the two layers of membrane had grown densely, and then quietly communicated to the little snake. Swallowed it all. Swallow it. Won't it stay in your veins? No. Speaking of which, this is also a special ability of the little snake. As long as there is not much of the things swallowed up in the target's body, such as blood clots or some tissues, it can be digested immediately and then brought out in the form of a weak body. Surgery boss. Thrombolysis king. Treating myocardial infarction, cerebral infarction, etc. is more convenient than digging in with vines, and there are no further consequences. Even if it was a thrombectomy in the previous life, there still had to be a pocket underneath to carry the debris, and the little snake didn't need that. Okay, cured. Gretel recalled the little snake, released the monitoring spell and tranquility spell, and clapped his hands. The old dwarf slowly opened his eyes, touched his chest, and pressed it hard. Hey, it's not broken. It must not be broken, the only cut was made when shaving my chest. Greet snickered and threw in a tool to treat minor injuries, including the bloody wound from shaving his chest. Okay, everything is cured. If you want to stay here, just stay here for observation for a few days. If you don't want to stay, just go back and come back every 6 months or a year to see if the headache is gone. This, sir, how should I repay your kindness? Greet waved his finger directly, signaling Rum to come on stage and negotiate for him the treatment fee. As for Gretel's own needs, if the people you know have any incurable diseases, tell them and ask them to come to me. He just gave the instructions casually, not expecting the old dwarf to attract any strange patients. Unexpectedly, this old man really had some connections and prestige. Not long after, he actually introduced an unexpected patient to him. "Sir, look, I also have a headache, can you treat me too? Which one of you has a headache? Thanks to Ed for the 1,500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right?" Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1475. Standing in front of Gretel was an ogre. It's nothing, ogres are just a race, an intelligent race with lower intelligence. Under the rule of Silver Dragon, they would not really eat people. As long as they did not eat people, Gretel would not have any discrimination against him. However, Gretel silently looked at the ogre in front of him, and he couldn't say anything. He said, "It doesn't matter if your body is dirty or smelly, the bubble technique can take care of it anyway. He has a mouthful of yellow teeth, and when he talks, the meat residue in the gaps between his teeth will be sprayed out in front of his face along with unknown things. Anyway, I'm a doctor, and I'm only interested in patients. I don't want you to be older or not take a shower. The problem is, you are a two-headed ogre." Two heads. The two-headed ogre, how did the two heads grow out of its neck? How are the two blood vessels in your brain connected to the systemic circulation? Where do the blood vessels branch and join to join the heart? You said your head hurts. Your head looks like this. Could it be that there is a problem with hemodynamics and it will hurt? Name. Ah. May I have your name? Balu. My name is Balu. The head on the left side of the two-headed ogre answered immediately. As soon as he finished speaking, the right side of his head followed. My name is Haru. Should we call it Balu or Haru? Gretel stopped his pen tip and glanced up. Next to the two-headed ogre, the old dwarf bowed his head respectfully. Sir, this is how their race is. Each head has wisdom and each head has an independent name. One more head and one more name. If he is like this now, you can call him Balu Haru. Wisdom. That's called independent consciousness, each head has independent consciousness. Is this one person or two people? Greet silently cursed and decided not to dwell on this philosophical issue. Following his custom of consultation, he continued to ask. Male or female? Of course he's a man, the two-headed ogre's voice suddenly became louder. With a snap, a slap hit him on the head, making his voice stop. The old dwarf Matt, who was standing on the chair next to the ogre, nodded and bowed, and smiled at Gretel. Sir, don't be as knowledgeable as him, he is just a big fool, a big fool. Balu Haru, be respectful to your lord. As he spoke, he stood up on his tiptoes and pressed his palm on the two-headed ogre's head. He used all his strength and even relied on his weight to push him down. Obviously, neither the height nor the weight of the old dwarf could reach this point, but Balu was quite in awe of the old dwarf, and he bent down obediently when he slapped and scolded him. Gretel sighed and felt that his head started to hurt. He continued to ask questions and at the same time refreshed the records. Age. 26 years old. What is the average age of your race? Ah. Forget it, you can't expect too much from the ogre's IQ and social attributes. Gretel turned and asked the old dwarf. At what age can their species start having children, and how old can they live? Usually you can start having children at the age of 12. The old dwarf adapted well to Gretel's question and answered fluently. The youngest. Generally speaking, a warrior will die in battle at the age of 40. As for a spellcaster, someone like him with two heads and the ability to cast spells can live to be over 80 years old. Then 26 years old can be considered a youth, or a young adult. Gret nodded and got to the point. You said you have a headache, which one? I hurt. It hurts me too, Balu and Haru, or rather, the heads on the left and right sides of the two-headed ogre, responded together. Soon, this rush to answer turned into a quarrel. It hurt me first. It hurt me first. It hurts me more. It hurts me more. Balu turned his face to the right, and Haru turned his face to the left. The two heads were foaming at the mouth, and the sky was darkened by the noise. If the two-headed ogre hadn't only had one body and two arms, they would probably have hit each other bang bang. Of course, just because there are no extra arms doesn't mean the two heads won't fight. Greed watched helplessly as Balu and Haru went from glaring angrily to spitting at each other, to then tilting their heads to each other and banging their foreheads together. It's strange that I don't have a headache like this. Greed sighed, feeling a little messy all over. He shook his head vigorously, as if he wanted to shake all the complaints out of his head, and tried hard to bring the consultation back to the correct route. Were you born with two heads? Do both heads hurt? Of course not, the ogre widened his eyes exaggeratedly, with a look on his face like, sir, shouldn't you know everything? Why don't you even know this? He raised his finger and pointed to the left side of his head. This is my first head. Most of us only have one head. Only the strongest and bravest warriors, blessed by their ancestors, can grow a second head. Then when did you start having a headache? When the second head starts to grow, or not long after the second head starts to grow, Balu rushed to answer. As soon as he finished speaking, Haru became furious. Is it my fault that I have a headache? It's not your fault. Whose fault is it? The two heads of the ogre continued to glare at each other. Gretel couldn't bear it anymore and shouted. Shut up, everyone. Balu and Haru shut up together. Gretel rubbed his forehead and pointed at Balu. I ask, you answer. The other one is not allowed to speak. After I ask, he will ask you again. You said you have a headache, where does it hurt? Point to me. After a round of consultation, the ogre Balu Haru found that in addition to having headaches, he often felt dizzy. Generally speaking, headaches come and go, a bit like convulsions, and often a bit insomnia. So what exactly is going on? Gretel thought about it, searching hard in his mind, turning from pathology to internal medicine and then to neurology, trying to find the corresponding possibility. While thinking about it, he asked Balu Haru to stand up and walked with him to the next door for examination. Come on, stand up straight, don't move. The light of detection magic was stimulated and passed through Balu Haru's back, illuminating an X-ray image in Gretel's meditation field of vision. For a moment, Gretel's brows jumped. Wonderful! So amazing! From the ogre's spine, to be precise, from the first thoracic vertebra upward, there are two cervical vertebrae, one on the left and one on the right. Since the cervical vertebrae are separated, the trachea and esophagus are also separated here. As for the various muscles that stabilize the cervical spine, such as the sternocleidomastoid muscle, how they are separated and how they connect the two cervical vertebrae at the same time is another process. After the X-ray, the next step is CT and MRI, taking turns. Since the cervical vertebrae are bifurcated, the brachiocephalic trunk of the artery is also divided into two branches, and two sets of common carotid arteries extend out to supply blood to the left and right sides of the head respectively. Correspondingly, the veins also branched into two branches, withdrawing the blood circulating in the two heads. The species in this world are really wonderful. If only he could manage to get a two-headed ogre corpse for him to dissect. He must dissect every blood vessel, nerve, and tissue in detail, and then draw the most detailed anatomical diagram. But now there are no corpses available, so Gretel can only use CT films and MRI films to satisfy his craving. He murmured. Here, the blood pumped out by one heart is enough to supply blood to two heads. Then I looked at the CT and MRI results carefully, scanning them piece by piece. It didn't look like there was necrosis of brain tissue, nor did it look like there was a blood clot or cerebral infarction. Brain tumors, brain space-occupying lesions, intracranial infections, glaucoma, rhinitis, sinusitis, etc., were checked one by one, and it didn't seem like there was a problem. Could it be that the cervical spine is compressing the nerves? It's not impossible. Gretel stared at the MRI film, his brows knitted together. To be honest, where there was originally only one cervical vertebra, another one was forcibly split, and the two sides made room for each other. Just kidding, the cervical vertebrae are only so big, and the space for the nerves to go is so wide. It is normal for another one to grow out, and it will compress the nerve. It would be weird if it does not compress the nerve. Baru Haru, do your race all have headaches? He asked casually while thinking. I mean, if I grow two heads, will both heads hurt? That's not true. Balu and Haru shook their heads together. They didn't cooperate well. Haru's nose hit the back of Balu's head, and there was another ping ping pong pong. After being patted twice by the old dwarf before he calmed down, Haru poked his head forward and answered Gretel. Generally speaking, it only hurts when the head grows. After all, why does such a big head grow? After it grows, it usually doesn't hurt. Otherwise, how can we live? This is true. If every two-headed ogre would face nerve compression in the cervical spine, causing headaches and dizziness, then this race would not survive. The risks of evolution are greater than the benefits of evolution. But I have a headache. It must be because I didn't grow well at that time. I didn't eat enough during the time when my head was growing. Haru said this, and glared at Balu again, earning a few eye rolls. I just said you don't give me food. If you don't give it to me, it won't grow well. If it doesn't grow well, it will give me a headache. Okay, Gretel interrupted again. Answer my question. You. Raise your head. Lower your head. Raise your head again. Lower your head again. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Do you have a headache? No. Are your fingers numb? Are your arms numb? Nor. This doesn't look like the cervical spine is compressing the nerves. Greet continued to frown, thought for a while, and pointed at Balu Haru. I need to shave your heads and see the veins in your heads. Who comes first? He. Balu and Haru scrambled to answer.